It is a city where one game, one team, one set of heroes stand apart from all others. Because for generations of us in Montreal, hockey hasn't been just a sport. It's been a way of life.
For the fourth consecutive time, the Montreal Canadiens have won the Stanley Cup.
The Canadiens haven't just been a franchise, but a symbol of what excellence can look like.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters in Montreal.
And names like Rocket Richard, Jean Beliveau, Guy Lafleur haven't just been stars, but icons forever ingrained in history. Yet there was once a time when there were others, names people knew. The Grand Orange, the Kid, the Hawk, the Rock, and Pedro. Men who didn't wield sticks and pucks, but bats and balls. Members of another team that captured the heart of this city in unforgettable ways.
The Expos advance to the championship series.
El Presidente, El Perfecto.
The Expos are still alive in Montreal. You just have to look a little harder to find them.
The Canadians were les glorieux, the glorious. Somehow they were up here. The Expos were of the people. People called them in French, nos amours, our loves. Montreal's a city of style, of fashion, of dash. And this team appealed to Montrealers.
It was colorful, it was alive, and fans just loved the Expos.
It was weird. It was a weird franchise. It wasn't like playing in Cleveland or Milwaukee or New York. It always had that different vibe to it. The mascot was weird. The stadium was weird. 2 languages.
Popcorn, mais soufflet. Hot dog, chien chaud. Elle est loin à la droite. Bonsoir!
All of it was weird. But weird was great.
Tricolor hats. Think about it. Tricolor hats. You're saying, what the heck is that?
They look like clowns out there. I wonder if everybody in here think they look like clowns.
Dude, I love them.
In a city that's primarily French, they had oompa bands.
I mean, really, who has oompa bands?
And they used to play a song called The Happy Wanderer.
Valderie, Valdera, Valderie, Valdera, Valderie. Imagine 30,000 people singing that, you know?
We were all laughing, you know, going like, these people are crazy.
They would come out in full house and la-di-dee, la-di-da, ha-ha-ha, all that stuff like that. Oh, they were into it, man.
You had a dancer on top of the dugouts, you know, and everything.
You had dancers in the dugout, man?
On top.
Oh, we had Yuppie, man. We didn't have no dancers, man.
Even now, when you get a small group of former Expos together these days, the memories come flooding back.
I saw the fun. My eyes lit up like a Christmas tree when I first saw the nightlife part.
Well, that's everybody.
Yeah.
I can remember many occasions. They'd say, hey, Rook, come on. I didn't drink. He said, well, get a glass of milk.
It was fun. The theme was fun, because if you build on winning, you could have problems. But if you build on having fun, we had no problems.
There was no better atmosphere. First of all, they had these yellow seats, and if you banged on those things, the sound that came out was incredibly loud and also very annoying for the opposing team.
Tough luck.
The little nuances, the songs that they would play, the chicken that would come on the screen, the food, the poutine, the hot dog, there was a charm to it.
They had a mascot for 1 year named Suki.
The kids were afraid of him. He looked like a monster.
It looked like Mr. Met's, let's say, mentally challenged cousin. Okay, so they move on to another mascot.
Yuppie! Exclamation point.
What is Yuppie? You know, what is it? Is it a bear? You know, what is it?
Time is called, and third base umpire Bob Davidson is throwing Yuppie out of the ball game.
I have never in my life seen a mascot of any major sports team ejected from a baseball game.
We've seen it all now, huh? Yuppie's been thrown out of the game.
Only in Montreal.
There was something a little Mickey Mouse about those Expos, but it was our Mickey Mouse. It was utterly charming without being traditionally charming. It was Montreal charming.
And plus, we had a lot of fun personalities, too. Bill Lee.
There were times where I thought he was a homeless guy.
Cromartie,
Buncho Man,
Dawson and Rain, Larry Walker and Moises Alou.
And Walker doesn't know how many outs there were.
Pedro was one.
And Reggie's gonna go after him.
We got into a lot of fights.
I had to go hollering one day like, Pedro, man, you hitting these dudes on purpose?
You can hear the fans shouting, Pedro, Pedro.
Fans very much took to guys who were colorful. They didn't necessarily sweat off-field escapades. They didn't worry about any of that stuff.
Larry Walker, sometimes, he'll become the bartender and he will start giving everybody that passed by on the street drinks. Drinks are on me. And those moments were like so much fun. I didn't want to let go of those summers in Montreal.
He played 9 seasons with the Expos. Number 49, Warren Cromartie.
More than a decade after their departure, they are not forgotten. Even a few exhibition games can still trigger a familiar passion.
Bonsoir, Maria!
They filled the joint. They put 97,000 people in the stadium for 2 games. 97,000 people. The next season in 2015, another 97,000 people showed up. We were singing Expo songs and we were singing Valderie Valdera, and we were crying, grown men. We were crying over the outpouring of emotion.
It was literally like seeing someone who you thought was dead. And now all of a sudden, 10 years later, they're like, hey, guess what? I'm back.
Long before the Montreal Expos, there were the Montreal Royals, a minor league club that became, in 1939, the Dodgers' AAA farm team. A host of legends would pass through that Royals clubhouse over the years, but none more significant than a 27-year-old Jackie Robinson, who spent the 1946 season with the team, 1 year before breaking Major League Baseball's color barrier.
Montreal is a baseball city. So baseball has always been there.
But in 1960, the Royals folded, which actually might have been the best thing for baseball in Montreal, because Major League Baseball was expanding, and the city was making a bid to get into the game.
We had a mayor, Mr. Drapo. He wanted to be able to have a stadium so he could bring in the Olympics to Montreal, and baseball was a way to do it.
Montreal's a huge, huge underdog, and against all odds, Montreal gets picked.
We will all be proud of our Montreal Expos.
There's only a few months left until the 1969 season is going to start, but they don't have anywhere to play. There's no stadium. Where are they going to play their games?
We were having a wake in our office for the team that wouldn't be, and there was a phone call from the mayor. I went down to his office, and there was a picture of Jarry Park.
A municipal park called Jarry Park. And Drapeau says, we're going to turn this into a Major League Baseball stadium. The president of the National League doesn't want to hear no and doesn't want to think about no and just says, okay, I believe you.
I'm afraid to mention the word problem because every time I mention it, the mayor would say, we have no problems, we only have solutions.
Night and day, the city and the club labored to do the impossible, to put into operation what has been called the most fantastic sports enterprise in Canadian history.
Everything was rushed. A rushed construction job through a cold, tough winter, and it was almost ready for the opening day game. Almost ready because they hadn't installed all of the seats.
The night before they're going to play their first game, they have to set up folding chairs.
Chairs that the ball club had rented from a funeral home.
Basically, the first general manager of the baseball team is unfolding chairs. Imagine Dave Dombrowski unfolding chairs at Fenway Park.
It was close, but it was wonderful.
Play ball!
Well, fans, Major League Baseball has come to Montreal in a big way. Thousands of people of all ages are enjoying baseball at Jarry Park.
The day after, in one of the French papers, The editor wrote, Les Expos, nos amours. The Expos, we love you. And that always stayed. They were our lovers, they always stayed. And in the Gazette, Le Grand Orange, Rusty Staub, his name was there. In one day, people loved us, and we had a superhero in Rusty Staub. Opening day.
They called him Le Grand Orange, an original Expo who endeared himself to the fans not just by making 3 all-star teams, but by learning French. Rusty Staub was the star the expansion Expos needed to connect with their city.
The reason why I learned French was I felt kind of stupid not to be able to talk to a child.
Je veux communiquer avec le public.
I needed to be able to talk about baseball. I needed to talk about how to get around, how to order at a restaurant. And to be able to do those things, it took on a whole new air with the people in Canada.
Other than Jean Beliveau on the Montreal Canadiens, he was as popular a figure in this city.
Le Grand Orange.
Le Grand Orange.
Le Grand Orange.
See that hair? That's why they call him Le Grand Orange.
Le Grand Orange was the first Expo superstar, but where he played was almost as colorful.
We've got a dandy coming up for you here tonight, here at Jerry Park.
I mean, they had so many idiosyncrasies at the ballpark.
We had a dancer. We had a dancer at Jerry Park.
This guy ran up and down the seats, and everybody cheered. If he wasn't there, I don't know if they'd have continued the game.
At the time, they had usherettes.
They're wearing go-go boots. Think about it now. They were very popular, very popular. However,
it was a major league ballpark in name only.
And sundown was very, very tough for the first baseman.
The sun would set right in the first baseman's eyes.
That's a fact. That really was almost dangerous.
I can remember the first baseman hit the deck and the ball rose up and landed in the stands. That's when they realized they had to stop the game for 20 minutes each night.
Realistically, you got to say we're going to finish last in our division. If anybody looks at it any other way, they're just kidding somebody.
The Expos lost a lot of games those first few seasons, but fans had been ready for that. What they weren't expecting was the 1972 trade of their beloved superstar.
That's the only time in my career I was ever caught unaware. It actually hurt. I was stunned. I was.
People couldn't really wrap their arms around it. They felt, well, we lost one of our own. And as things go on, this kind of escalates. If you had to look ahead and said, what was going to happen in the history of the franchise, that was it. It was always going to be like that, and it was always going to be in peril as a result.
I met the people at Walt Disney. We said, okay, so how do you operate a mascot? The first thing they told us, you must never take the head off of a mascot. Cromartie, Cromartie, Cromartie.
He talked me into putting that Yuppie suit on.
Oh,
he ever tell you that?
I talked you into doing it.
We had a rain delay, and we looked in this room, and there's Yuppie with the head off, and he's smoking a cigarette. So I look at it, Hawk look at me, do it. So I went on the top, did my Babe Ruth thing, and it kind of got going a little bit. So I run down first base, save. I went like this, everybody started, okay. So I got on second base, taking my lead, argument. He the only one knew I'm in there. Stole home, took the thing off.
Took the Yuppie head off, man.
You should have seen the people face.
Big Bush went over the stadium.
Through the mid-70s, the Expos remained a middling club, unable to get above 500. But in the franchise's minor league system, stars were beginning to develop. And there were none brighter than the guy they called the Kid.
You know how you got that name Kid, you know? Gary was tearing it up down in AAA. And every day, Don Carruthers, he would mess with Barry Foote. Barry Foote was the catcher at that time. Hey, Footy, you hear about the Kid? Got 3 hits here down in AAA. Hey, Footy, the Kid went deep, 2-run shot. Every day.
It was always, hey, wait till Carter gets here, wait till Carter gets here. And when he got here, he didn't disappoint anybody.
Carter, in every respect, starts flourishing. He's a terrific hitter, he's got power, and just becomes such a great defensive catcher.
He had that smile, he had the curly hair. He would always find the camera.
Some of his teammates would call him Lights, because when the lights came on, Gary Carter would appear in front of the camera.
He was the enthusiastic kid. And people saw that love of the game and love for the city.
He just jumped right in, and he was never shy to practice French, you know, even if he wasn't pronouncing it perfect.
Bonjour, mesdames, messieurs.
It really gave the people there in Montreal, I think, just an extra love for him.
Mon nom est Gary Carter, le receiver des Expos.
Gary Carter was the face of the Expos. He was the Expos.
Carter was the new face of a franchise about to embark on a new era in a new home. Olympic Stadium, though built for the Olympics, was in many ways an upgrade from tiny Jarry Park. But it was far from perfect.
You don't walk up to the Big O and think, wow, this is absolutely beautiful. It was ugly. Just a big oval brick.
Some people said it looked like a big spaceship had landed. Some other people weren't as kind and said it looked more like a toilet.
The Olympic Stadium was always cold. It was concrete, and it didn't have a roof.
The retractable roof was in a warehouse because they ran out of money.
This was the billion-dollar boondoggle. It wasn't designed for baseball.
The Big O. It was a dump. It was a concrete elephant. It was nothing to be proud of, but it was ours.
A unique new stadium was now embraced by a unique cast of characters who connected with Montreal in unpredictable ways.
You know, we all had nicknames. Rodney Scott, Cool Breeze.
I mean, it was like jazz on the field watching Rodney Scott run the bases, stealing third base when the catcher would throw the ball back to the pitcher. You saw that in Little League.
The Hawk.
Andre Dawson was one of those guys that had muscles coming from everywhere. He had that look about him. If you didn't know him, you'd be afraid of him.
Spaceman.
Billy was a brilliant guy and a really smart pitcher, but also somebody who was eccentric and just hard to read.
I'm not flaky at all. It's the right-handed world that caused the problems, and left-handers are just responding to it.
In 1979, the Expos had a winning season for the first time in their existence. And suddenly, Expos baseball was instantly transformed into the most exciting, thrilling party in town.
Olympic Stadium became the place to be.
As soon as you actually entered the actual stadium, they had Oompa bands. They had these German Oktoberfest kind of bands that were playing in the lobby.
I mean, really, who has Oompa bands? And people loved it.
They used to play a song called The Happy Wanderer. The chorus is basically Valderie, Valdera. That became the rally cry for the team.
Valderie.
30,000 Canadians singing that in unison.
And then you had the scoreboard. It was pixelated, it was strange, and it had these weird messages.
If the opposing pitcher threw at first base, we had a chicken, come on.
And not some sort of beautiful chicken. It would be basically a cardboard cutout of a chicken into electronic form.
There was a Cardinals lefty who one day decided if he could break the chicken record, which I think was 11.
My phone ringer is the chicken sound.
You were going to a game in that era, especially from another city. If you just zapped in from out of town, you just sort of looked around. What is this? What am I eating? What is this beer? What is this scoreboard? What is this band? It was all completely foreign, right down to the player announcements being in both languages. This was unique to Montreal.
It was crazy, man. 2 languages, French and English out there, and flag waving. They started to know us a little bit, waiting for us at the subway station. And for me, 79 is really when they really realized what they had.
No one ever wanted to leave the party at Olympic Stadium. And it was about to get even bigger.
We always come close, but we couldn't get across. We get to the bridge, but we couldn't cross the bridge. But one time we were real close in '81. And I mean, the city was electric. It was clear of the places. Montreal was on fire.
1981 was a strange year in baseball history. It was split up by a 7-week-long player strike, a situation that led to 2 separate seasons. The Expos won the second half of the season, marking their first ever playoff appearance. They defeated the Phillies in a 5-game NLDS.
It's over. The Expos advance to the championship series.
There was a couple of fans holding the Canadian flag, and I went over there and I got the flag and I held the flag up. I was really a proud Canadian at that time. You know, it's Canada's turn. They were Canada.
And for the first time, a Canadian team will be in the fight for the National League pennant.
It was like Canada against the United States. We had the whole country behind us.
The Montreal Expos were just 3 wins away from their first ever trip to the World Series. The Expos and Dodgers split the first 4 games, setting up a deciding 5th game to be played on a Monday in Montreal.
The first memory that I have ever was Blue Monday. Unfortunately, it was October 19th, 1981, 7 years old.
The game went to the 9th inning, tied 1-1. But then came a series of events that would forever define October 19th, 1981 as Blue Monday. With their closer hurt, the Expos sent their ace, Steve Rogers, to warm up in the bullpen.
The adrenaline was just pumping. It was coming out of my ears because I wasn't used to doing that. And they said, you're going to go in to start the inning. I said, okay, right.
Steve Rogers is into the game, and this unusual position to see Steve in out of the bullpen.
Rogers would retire the first batter, Steve Garvey, on just 1 pitch.
Soft pop, and Rodney Scott has it.
He would then face Ron Cey.
The adrenaline I didn't handle, and I was mechanically just off a little bit.
He falls behind Cey, 3-0.
I was thinking the right pitches. Gary and I were right in sync. I just wasn't throwing them.
Swung on, lifts a high fly ball left field. Drains in the corner. He's under it, makes the catch on the warning track. Oh! He gave it a ride.
The pitch to Ron Cey was a warning sign. Oh, geez, maybe he doesn't have it. He's never done this before. I remember feeling a pit in my stomach seeing that Cey fly ball.
With 2 down in the 9th, Rick Monday stepped up to the plate.
I did not hit well against Steve Rogers in my career. 167 is what I hit against him.
3-1.
3-1, if I miss, I'm going to miss low and away and walk. I just threw that ball so poorly that it ended up being high and right over the middle of the plate.
I use the theory, swing hard in case you happen to hit it.
Here's the 3-1 pitch, and it swung on, fly ball, center field.
I saw the swing. I knew he made, a good connection with it, and I actually felt I had a beat on it.
Dawson going back.
I saw Andre going back.
Dawson drifts back.
I thought I was going to make a play either right back at the warning track or at the wall.
Onto the warning track.
And it keeps carrying.
Dawson at the wall.
I got to the wall, and then
I saw him run out of room.
And it's gone.
That ball is a home run.
Oh, my God.
That's the day I thought you had wings. I was really praying that you had wings.
I got back, even though I was playing him to pull. I got back. I just didn't think it would carry as far as it did.
To see the ball disappear with Dawson moving back was just an absolute kick to the gut.
And all of a sudden, you could hear a pin drop.
We could hear the silence. When can you hear silence?
2-1 as Rogers taken deep by Rick Monday. It's his day of the week.
The saddest day in the history of sports in Montreal. The saddest day.
Even when you relive it, you still have that je ne sais quoi inside, and it's like, yeah.
When the Expos failed to rally in the 9th, the season ended, and Blue Monday was officially born. Never again would the Montreal Expos ever come so close to a World Series.
After that last out was made, and I think myself, Dawson, and Cromartie sat on our bench for like about an hour after that game was over.
Rick Monday, don't mention that name around here.
If you say the name Rick Monday, that gets people pretty pissed off.
Rick Monday, every time he came back to Montreal, there was always someone to remind him, you hit a home run.
And that first year coming back after that series, Steve Yeager, who was the catcher, was my roommate. We went to dinner in Montreal, and we sat down and we're looking at the menu, and we'd ordered a beverage. And the manager of this restaurant comes over and he says, "Gentlemen, I have to ask you to leave." And I went, "Well, you're not closing. We just ordered. It's like 7 o'clock at night." He goes, "No," he said, "we don't want fights in here." And I said, "We're not fighting. We're going to order and have dinner." He goes, "I'm not worried about you. But there's 6 guys back here that want to come over and start a fight with you. Please, leave." So we left. And that's when I discovered the Blue Monday. And I discovered that the winters are long in Montreal and they don't forget anything.
I believe that if the Expos had won the game, there would still be a baseball franchise in Montreal. Because I'm convinced they would have gone on to beat the Yankees in the World Series. The most remembered moment in the history of this franchise, Rick Monday's home run, Blue Monday, is something that was bad for the Expos. And if it had been something good, there would have been something for the people to have held on to through dark times.
LaFleur, he gives it into the air, back to LaFleur.
The Canadians won the Stanley Cup in 1979, the last of 4 in a row. And after that, this great dynasty started splintering. So there was room for a baseball team to capture the hearts of the city.
Montreal Expos in the early 80s were more popular than Montreal Canadiens. That's a fact. That's not pie in the sky thinking from hardcore baseball fans. They were giving away 2,000 tickets a game to fill the seats at the Montreal Forum in the early 80s, while the Expos were setting franchise attendance records.
Look out. He's got it. Charlie Lee has pitched a no-hit, no-run ball game.
The Expos played fire wagon baseball in the way the Canadians of the 70s played fire wagon hockey.
There goes Reeves. He steals without a back. Sensational catch.
People were going to games, they were flocking to games. It was a place to be. Celebrities like Donald Sutherland and the Prime Minister, these were regulars at Montreal Expo games.
The players were very popular. Community-wise, very popular.
All these guys kind of hung out, you know, in old Montreal, and they were very accessible, maybe a little too accessible, but everybody partied in the 80s, especially in a city like Montreal.
And for some members of the team, partying meant turning to drugs. The most notable example was the team's young star, Tim Raines.
I remember having problems when I first got there, you know, doing all the partying things and stuff like that at a young age. I mean, I was 19.
What happened was not really knowing the effects of what it would get me into. I sort of went overboard and kind of got myself in trouble.
Being in an exciting city and so many, you know, good and bad things that can go on with that. Being out all times of night, hanging out, partying here and there.
He was not nearly the player he was in 1982, after a fabulous 1981 when he was runner-up as the NL Rookie of the Year.
I took it upon myself to say, you know, if I'm going to be as good as I can be, I'm going to need help. Andre Dawson was one of those guys that was more like a straight and narrow guy. But one day I went to him, I said, "Man, you know, I want to be like you." And he said, "It's going to be okay." He kind of showed me the way.
Tim Raines was special, and I got to develop a very, very special and close bond with Timmy.
Me and Andre became the best of friends, even to this day, you know, we're the best of friends.
He named his son Andre, and made me his godfather. And he was born on the same day, so we celebrated the same birthday.
If I had to single out one person to say that they had the biggest influence on my career, it would definitely be Andre Dawson.
Despite Raines developing into a perennial all-star with the help of Dawson, the team gradually retreated back to mediocrity in the mid-1980s.
That team should have won more. It should have won. They had a great team.
But even amid the disappointment, there was always one player who stood apart, which made it all the more shocking when the face of the franchise, the kid, was dealt away after the 1984 season.
It was almost like, what? You know, they traded Gary Carter?
Wow. I would say that was the second heartbreaking situation player-wise. When Rusty left, it was just as heartbreaking as when Gary left.
Those two trades hurt the Expos. You can't imagine how.
Andre Dawson and Tim Raines would be the next ones to go. It was the end of an era that fans would always remember fondly, a memory embodied on a September afternoon in 1992. Long after his prime, the kid who had signed with the Expos for that season came to the plate for what would be his final at-bat in the majors.
It was the last day of the last homestand there, and he, you know, both his knees were shot, shoulder, I mean, he was hurting top to bottom.
We were kidding around before the game, and I said, I know that you're probably hobbling a little bit. I'm going to cheat in, and I'm going to throw you out. Don't hit the ball to me in right field because I'm not going to give you a hit. I'm not going to let you get a hit.
You just want to end on a high note if you possibly can.
Enjoy it all, pal. You've earned it.
He came up, and I looked at him, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna play in just to see if I can get him to look out here. And he nodded, he tipped his cap, and I cheated in. And what does he do? He hits the ball in the gap in right center. Now I gotta take off, because it's over my head. I looked back and I just shook my head. I said, I tried you and you rose to the occasion.
Holy cow, what an emotional moment here in Montreal. Listen to these people.
It was the storybook ending.
This will be a Hollywood ending for Gary Carter. And Carter going to take a curtain call.
When you look back at '94, the team was destined. I mean, it just felt like we was gonna win that thing.
You had that good mix, and you had the guy, you had the magic man at the front, you had Felipe.
Yeah.
He was great.
You know, I'm gonna tell you something. Okay? I've been playing this game for 17, 18 years, and they're gonna tell me how to manage, Crow.
When you talk about the 1994 season, the first major move of that offseason was they traded Delino DeShields for a young pitcher, a string bean, weighed 146 pounds, named Pedro Martinez.
Here we go. He strikes out the side.
They had the best outfield in baseball: Larry Walker, Marquise Grissom, Moises Alou.
The unity that we had in that team was also impressive. My God, could we do everything together?
There's a lot to cheer if you are a Montreal Expo fan tonight.
The most memorable moment of that season came on a late June night when the Expos faced the mighty Braves.
The turning point of that season was Cliff Floyd hitting a home run against God, Maddox.
And the 2-2. Fly ball deep right field.
Elle est loin à la droite. Bonsoir! Elle est partie. Floyd, Floyd, Floyd.
Three-run homer for Cliff Floyd.
When I hit that ball, I went numb. I know afterwards, the clubbies came over and was like, Greg Maddux absolutely destroyed the locker room that night.
You don't hit home runs against God.
That moment led us to believe that if we could beat Maddox in the Atlanta Braves, we could beat everybody else.
And the
Expos. They're on a pace to win 110 games.
They had the best record in baseball, and they had opened up a 6-game lead on the second-place Atlanta Braves in the National League. And then disaster struck.
Sad we had to leave this way, but sometimes you gotta do what you have to do.
All of a sudden, we had that abrupt stop. It left us all with an empty feeling.
I just felt like, man, that was our chance to win a championship, you know, and they took it away. And I'll always be somewhere in a dark place because of that.
When that season ended, because of the strike, I sat down at home and I made notes on this piece of paper listing the players, the record, and the date, because I think it was the death knell of baseball in Montreal.
But the strike, brought on by the many money problems baseball had, was at least in one respect a fitting way for the Expos to get undercut, because it was money, or more precisely the lack of it, that was starting to threaten the team's existence.
They still have this great team. All they have to do is literally nothing, just status quo. Just make sure that this team takes the field the next year. And they decide within the course of 3 days, basically, get rid of everybody. Get rid of Marquise Grissom, trade him. Get rid of Ken Hill, get rid of John Wetland.
Larry Walker, come on. You couldn't have had a better guy. And he had to walk because they couldn't afford to pay him.
Local owners would argue that they were in survival mode and they just had to tread water, but you got to win. Okay, we knew they couldn't keep everybody, but you could have kept 2 of these guys.
The idea of Expos University is you would serve 4 years as an Expo, and then you graduate, and then you were on to other things. Pedro Martinez in 1997 strikes out 305 batters and has a 1.90 ERA. Let's go trade him.
Every year was in trade talks. I mean, the nucleus, it was right there to actually develop into whatever you wanted that organization to be. You can only stop and think.
If you want to talk about the what-ifs in baseball history, Jeter and Posada and Mariano Rivera and Bernie Williams and those guys, maybe they're not legends because the Expos are kicking their butt every year in the World Series.
Financial issues had in fact been hindering the franchise for years. Multiple ownership groups and a failed attempt to move the team into a new downtown ballpark left the club's future in doubt. Then, in 2001, owner Jeffrey Loria sold the Expos to Major League Baseball. All that, along with dwindling attendance, made it seem like only a matter of time before the franchise would be relocated.
Kind of preparing myself for the worst, you know. You've got 5,000 people in the stands every night. It can't last forever.
2004 would be the Expos' final season in Montreal. 35 years after the club was born, it was time to say goodbye.
It was emotional. I was sitting close down the first base line as a fan with my dad. I remember leaning back and somebody I knew in the row behind me ended up taking a picture. There's no joy in my face at a baseball game.
And now the curtain falls on Major League Baseball here in Montreal.
A month later, there would be a final farewell to Montreal and their fans. It would come from the most famous graduate of Expos University.
The Boston Red Sox are world champions.
I would like to share this with the people in Montreal that are not going to have a team anymore.
I'm sure the scene was played out in living rooms all over Montreal with just tears streaming down.
I saw myself as a champion in '94. I just could never celebrate it. So I wanted to share it with the people that I thought deserved to actually have that opportunity.
My ring is with them too.
You go back to that moment with Pedro, and there's so much love in that moment. And if and when we do get a team back, I'll always think that was like the first initial spark.
It was a sad day around Major League Baseball on Thursday as Hall of Famer Gary Carter died at the age of 57.
We lose a pretty good one, a good guy and a great player today, way too early.
Gary Carter was never just another baseball hero in another baseball town. He was a figure who revealed to Montreal all that an iconic sports star could be.
Everybody had their moment with Kid. You know, everybody had that one moment where he was kind to them, or they saw him in public and he did something exceptionally kind that no other athletes would do.
So when Carter passed away in 2012, it reminded many Expos fans of a time that once was, and a time that perhaps could be again.
When Gary Carter passed, it really woke people up, and it got people really emotional and really nostalgic about the Expos.
Mesdames, Messieurs, veuillez vous joindre à nous alors que nous allons observer un moment de silence à la mémoire de Gary Carter.
You don't have words for Gary Carter. All you can do is smile when you hear his name. And that's how I want to remember Gary.
When the kid passed away, I said, no, something's wrong here. You got to get them back.
Yeah, that would make Gary happy, for sure. Gary would be smiling down in heaven about it. He'd love to have a team back there.
There's unfinished business here. That's what it amounts to.
We're at a point now the whole world knows Montreal wants their Expos back. We have the media behind us. Major League Baseball knows what we're trying to do now.
I would never say there isn't a chance of expanding in Canada. Montreal's a great city, and I do think that the showing surrounding the exhibition games is an impressive indication of interest.
Like a good son that always returns home to his parents. I think Montreal should have his team return to Montreal.
Once we get this team back, which we will get this team back, we get this nice, beautiful 35,000 seat stadium. There's gonna be a couple statues out front. And one of them is gonna be his, and the other is gonna be Gary Carter. I guarantee you that.
In truth, there's no certainty that Major League Baseball will return to the city. What is certain is that the Expos and their colorful history remain in the hearts of the people of Montreal.
It's not nostalgia, it's not just memories, it's DNA. It's truly part of us. Look at all the players that passed through Montreal.
Gary Carter, Andre Dawson, Larry Walker,
Rusty Staub, Vladimir Guerrero, Pedro Martinez.
They were special. They were good. And I hope people recall that.
Baseball may come back to our city one day, it may not. This April, like most Aprils here, sports fans will be thinking about their hockey team and the Stanley Cup. But long ago, and not so long ago, when April came, there was another game in town. And the ones who knew about that colorful, truly unique team will continue to know. The Expos, the team, the players, the memories are still alive and always will be. You just have to remember to look to find them.
My name's Anakin Slade. I'm a hip-hop artist from Montreal, huge Expos fan. And I actually wrote a sort of eulogy to the team.
Annie Slade's got the springtime blues real bad. Can't help but reminisce about the great years we had. I remember photo day 83 summer. Yeah, I still have the pick of me, my pops and my brother. I remember All-Star Game 5 fans strong.
59,000 fans looking on. I remember tears at the kids' last game. Stood right behind him as the anthem played. I remember singing Valderie, Valderall, 03 wild card race last hurrah. I'm missing Montreal, ball 10 years on. Sometimes you don't know what you've got till it's gone.